to the nation. I'm Jessie Chahal. RAJEN Devadason joins us today, a licensed financial planner with MIDLIFE Investment Management, and I hope to get some ideas from him about rebuilding financial strength in midlife. And for many, this stage of life brings both challenges and opportunities when it comes to managing money, planning for retirement, and regaining financial stability. RAJEN, welcome, and it's good to have you here. Who doesn't like to talk about money?
Thank you, Jessie. I'm delighted to be back here.
That's right. It's a pleasure to speak to you today on a topic that's so important as we prepare for retirement and as we look into having a secure future in the next few years to come. And for those who are already at those crossroads, you will find this fruitful as well. Now, before we sat down here today, you mentioned this to me, RAJEN, which I thought was really interesting. You said Malaysians are retiring too early. Give us context why, and that's also quite worrying, actually.
Okay, well, you think about it. Malaysia basically is plugged into the world, and we punch way above our weight when it comes to the level of trade. You know, we're only 34 million people in a world with 8.2 billion people, but we are consistently, probably top 30 in the world when it comes to trade. So we are definitely a part of a globalized world. And when you look at what's happening in other countries around the world, you realize that our current retirement age is far, far too young. For the longest time, in my speaking, in my writing, and also based primarily on the back of the envelope calculations I did about Malaysia's demographics and the fact that we're actually a fast aging society.
Right.
So quite a while ago, I actually figured out that based on our numbers, population-wise, and based on the needs of a globalized world, we simply don't have enough people. And logically, the smart thing to do then is to actually extend our retirement age. So quite a few years ago, I basically worked out that it probably makes sense for Malaysia to shift our retirement age to 65, ideally sometime around 2035, and then to push it out further to maybe 70 by the year 2050. Now that's a long, long way away, but I have consistently spoken about it, written about it, and usually when I do that, people get upset with me, but I can live with that. So I found it quite heartening that experts at the World Bank very recently actually came out and the numbers matched precisely what I was talking about. So I found that heartening. But the truth of the matter is this. For Malaysia to continue to grow, we need to harness the capacities and the strengths of every generation.
Right.
Now, one of the biggest problems that we have usually from union people is that no, we can't push our retirement age further out, because if that were to happen, then the young people can't get jobs. But the problem with that is the jobs are not the same. The jobs still need to be done. And admittedly, we've got the rise of AI, and quite frankly, that's a bit irritating in many, many ways. But it can be a tool for greater business productivity. And so there will be jobs that fall by the wayside and there'll be new jobs created, but we need all generations. And so when we look at what's going on with people in different countries, the official retirement ages at this juncture, typically about 62 to 68, so we're too early, and everything's being shifted out. So I think it's important that we actually do retire later, work longer.
Right. If to pinpoint on that 2 years of shift and pushing that back, well, how much of a difference does that really make?
It makes a huge difference. You think about it. During the COVID years, every country on the planet went through a very, very hard time. I find it very, very interesting when we look at the example of, say, Singapore. Singapore's got CPF the way we have EPF. And, Singapore manages its finances very, very well. And throughout the COVID years, the Singapore government, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not an expert, did not allow any tapping into CPF funds by individuals to tide them over that period. Because Singapore's fiscal position is very, very strong, they were actually able to fund things, and people didn't actually have to make sacrifices in terms of personal retirement. Malaysia's situation is different. And throughout the COVID period, now we had 2 administrations. During that time, there were 4 rounds of EPF withdrawals. I don't have the latest numbers, but I do remember vividly listening to our then finance minister, and this was after we did the third round of EPF withdrawals.
Right.
Now, the macro numbers are really very interesting. Malaysia has 34 million people, and half of 34 is 17 million. Malaysia currently has a workforce of 17.4 million people, I think, so it's about half. And of the 17 million, 10% are government servants, civil servants. Most civil servants now working are pensionable, and their pensions are super precious. You know, they work very hard, they actually end up with lower than market rates. But in a sense, it is deferred compensation. And so it's wonderful that they actually have their pensions. But the truth of the matter is that worldwide, when we look at how retirement programs are put together, there are effectively two types of programs. One is where you've got something known as defined benefit, DB. And so if you're a government servant and you work and you get a pension, it's a defined benefit.
Right.
When most of us, however, when we put together our plans, it's not a defined benefit, it's a defined contribution. You know, you and I put money to EPF.
Yeah.
It's a defined contribution, but we don't know what's going to come out. And because of that, the onus is on us to make sure that we have sufficient money.
Okay, on that note, and just to drive you back to where we're coming from for this discussion here, what is keeping Malaysians from saving enough in their retirement? Is it the accumulated lifestyle? Is it pressure to be, you know, seen in a certain way? Or is it just fatigue to say, I'm going to hang up my boots early? What are some of these factors from your observation and research, perhaps?
You know how when we were in school, sometimes the multiple choice questions had option D, all of the above? All of the above. Okay. But the bottom line is this. Remember I said Malaysians and Malaysia are plugged into the global system. But we, unfortunately, are not doing a very good job tapping into the global marketplace for jobs. Okay. So at one level, we're simply not earning enough. And the reason that we're not earning enough is because we don't have enough high quality jobs. And the jobs don't need to be just in Malaysia. They can be around the world. But to tap into the jobs that are available around the world, then it's not just a case of working hard, you also have to work smart. And this involves building your linguistic skills. Now, I was looking at this recently to inform some of my writing projects. And apparently, if you rank the number of people worldwide who speak different languages, number one, no surprise, is the global lingua franca, English. Number two is Mandarin. Again, no surprise. Now, Mandarin obviously is very important in China, but Mandarin is increasingly becoming a global and globalized language. Number three, if I remember correctly, is Hindi. And number four, oddly enough, is Spanish. Now, what's interesting is that if you learn Hindi, because you want to do more business maybe in the northern part of India, you can actually do very, very well with English. So for parents of young kids who are trying to figure out, well, how best may I actually position my kids to plug into the global opportunities, I would say the top three languages to focus on would be English, Mandarin, and Spanish. Now, Spanish isn't something that, you know, we naturally gravitate to, but, you know, there are plenty of sources to learn Mandarin here, regardless of whether you're ethnically Chinese or not.
I think that by this point of time, all that is kind of out the window, because mastering a language and any extra language is, of course, an asset to have as one wants to do global business and become, you know, part of a global
citizen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but we all have, I believe, a linguistic cerebral bandwidth constraints, and there are only so many languages we can learn.
Okay, I'm going to leave that there for now, because as interesting as that is, and I think that deserves a whole show on its own, often in your writings you talk about financial denial. Give us an explanation of what that really, how do you define that, and how do people face the truth without feeling defeated? And then what from that point onwards? Because it's sort of
that's fascinating.
denial.
I don't think I've ever written about financial denial.
Acceptance.
I
Okay.
believe the term that people generally know me for is delayed gratification.
Okay.
And delayed gratification doesn't mean giving up stuff that is bad for stuff that is good. Very often it means giving up stuff that is good for stuff that is great down the road. But what's really important is that when someone is, let's say, a young adult, let's say young adult into maybe midlife, so maybe in your 20s, in your 30s, maybe up to early 40s, some level of delayed gratification is very, very sensible. But delayed gratification isn't something that you should incorporate throughout your entire life. Otherwise, what's the point? You work and you work and you work. You save and you save and you invest and you invest, and then you drop dead from overwork and someone else spends your money. So it's really important to remember that delayed gratification is not denied gratification. It is deferred gratification. It's really quite interesting because I've been running my financial planning practice for quite a few decades now. I have some clients who are young. Usually they're the children of my existing clients, and then the clients would say, go see Uncle Rajan, and then they do, and then I try and help them get started, usually with savings. The textbooks will tell you that if a child is young or a young adult is very young, you got plenty of time, and therefore you can actually invest. The trouble is that if someone is very tender inside and has never experienced abrupt market shifts, particularly downward, then the incredible shock of a market collapse could actually frighten someone away from the capital market. The capital market comprises the equity market, the ownership market, and the debt market, the bond market. And so you want to be invested there, but you want to be invested there properly and long term. So saving first makes sense. And you know, if you're just starting out in your career and you don't have a lot of money, how are you going to generate the margin that's required to save?
Absolutely. How?
Delayed gratification. But as you get better with it, you will find that more and more money flows to you. And if you continue to manage your money well, hopefully your surplus is good. And then you can actually channel a portion of that surplus toward your savings and toward your investments. Does that help?
Yes, that does help. So let's move on from there then. For someone who wants to start planning at the age of 45 or 50, I don't know if you agree that might be late or you know, too late or too late perhaps. What's the one step forward? Do we settle debts? Do we increase savings? Do we begin with changing mindset? How do you put down those you know, checkpoints?
Very good question. Thank you, Jessie. By the time someone is 45, let's say, that individual is very much set in his or her own ways. And there's very little that I can actually say that will change the behavior toward money. But I will say this. If you have the flexibility to delay your own retirement, right now the official retirement in Malaysia is 60, right? So if you're running your own business, then all you have to do is look in the mirror each morning and decide, well, does the business owner allow me to have a holiday next week? And you know, every time I've had that conversation with myself in the mirror, I've always said yes. But I love my work, and I am hoping, God willing, as long as I stay healthy and strong and of sound mind, my goal for stage 1 retirement is actually at the age of 75. But because my wife and I own our own company, because I own my own business, my own sole proprietorship, I dictate. And so it's really a marketplace issue. If people want to work with me, and you know, it's quite a long runway because my goal is to retire at 75, then that makes life much easier. But if you're like 45 and then all your life you've dreamed of, I want to retire early, and official retirement in Malaysia is 60, but the person says, okay, I want to retire at 55, then you just have to make sure that you have your equations in place. Most people don't. And the main reason is we don't have enough jobs to allow us to earn enough money to set aside enough money. And quite frankly, I mean, you notice, and we noticed this most during the COVID years. Do you remember the increase in the price of fish, in the price of vegetables during the COVID period?
Yes, vivid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, vividly,
and so things are tough. Things are really expensive.
Okay, I want to go back to what you said about having those equations in place. What are those proportions? What are those equations when one thinks about retiring and thinks about saving and, you know, while juggling this whole work-life balance?
Okay. Many years ago, I created something in terms of intellectual property, something that I basically put my own rubber stamp on. So it's called, for those who want to Google it, it's called the RAJEN Devadason Blueprint for Financial Freedom. And it's only got 5 elements. It's incredibly easy to understand. So shall I just take you through that? Okay.
Definitely.
So we all work. And whether we work in our own business or work for an employer, your employer is Bernama, we all work and we earn what's known as active income. Now, Jesse, if I were to ask you, from month to month, year to year, would you like your active income to go up or down?
Up.
Absolutely. We all want our active income to grow. For our active income to grow, we need to first work harder. For those who have the option to earn overtime, we need to work longer. And for those who are aging out, you know, as you go late 30s, early 40s, you suddenly realize that it's very difficult to compete with the youngsters coming out with whole fresh skill sets. But we can work smarter. So we need to basically be humble enough to learn from those who are younger, and we also need to figure out a way to stay healthy, stay strong. You know, end of the day, if you're going to have to choose between health and wealth, I would say health first.
Right, health is the real wealth.
Yes, because you want to extend your runway. Okay. Plus, nobody wants to be sick.
Sure.
So we got to increase our active income. As we do so, we need to pay for our lifestyle. And I call that operational expenses. Now, if we earn here, and let's say you've got lots of friends who are all earning at this level, whether this level is 3,000 ringgit or 10,000 ringgit or 40,000 ringgit, doesn't really matter. But let's say this is where you're at. And we all have friends who are at the same level. And some of them spend here for their lifestyle, and some of them spend there for their lifestyle. For those who spend here, they're actually intentionally exercising delayed gratification for a while, temporarily, to be able to create a surplus. And so you've got your active income, you're actively trying to grow that. You've got your operational expenses, you've got a margin, and that hopefully if you're thinking of a flow through, there's a little bit more money flowing through. The next thing that you need to take care of would be your portfolio of debt. Now, normally when people talk about portfolio, they think a portfolio of investments or a portfolio of art. But the word portfolio just means a collection. And so almost all of us have a collection of debts. You know, we've got our car loan, we've got our mortgage or mortgages, you might have family loans. I'm really hoping and praying that not too many people who are watching this have got Along loans, because the loan shark loans are incredibly difficult to deal with, but they must be dealt with. Oh, and while I think about this, we're talking about retirement, we're talking about the possibility of extending retirement. My very, very clear advice to anyone, regardless of how old you are and regardless of how old you want to be when you retire, please, 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 if you can, health permits, don't retire until you have paid off every single debt. Everything. It'll just mean that your retired years are much happier, less stressed. Yep. So where was I? Active income, you got to grow that. Operational expenses, at least for the first couple of decades, you want to exercise delayed gratification. You want to create a surplus. You want to pay down your portfolio of debt. You want to try and make that disappear. But at the very least, you want to make sure that regular payments are made. And, you know, for most of our debts, they're paid once a month and there is a due date. My recommendation is, if possible, never pay your debts on time.
Never pay your debts on time?
If possible.
What's the secret, or what's the
goal
tip there?
should be to, if you can, pay your debts early.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so it wasn't the other way around.
It was the other way around. Wow, what secret? Because what happens then is people realize that you are trustworthy.
and that translates into credit, which can be worth a fortune down the road.
Just to jog back, when you say for the active income to, of course, increase that, and
we have to do three things.
Okay, let's go. Because one of the points of concern is that I'm already working. My wage is not enough. It's never enough. I've got 2 debts to pay, a family to run, education loan perhaps to pay up for, and so on and so forth. And so then what happens? I mean, my wage is simply not enough.
Correct. So you got to work harder, you got to work longer, you got to work smarter.
Take on more jobs.
Absolutely, if necessary. That's one of the reasons why I tend to be very unpopular whenever we have conversations like this, because the equations are really simple. You do your stuff, you bring money in. This is your lifestyle. And the 2 parameters are, if I don't have enough and this is my lifestyle, the only 2 things I can change are, what can I do to increase my income? What can I do to bring down my expenses? And the bringing down of expenses is driven by the delayed gratification principle. But remember, delayed gratification is not permanently denied gratification. It is only temporarily deferred gratification. But until you get to the point where you can actually generate that surplus, all bets are off. You're never going to be able to manage your money well.
So after OPEX, we move to?
Okay, so active income, operational expenses, and then you want to, if possible, have early payments on your portfolio of debt.
That's right.
And hopefully you still have additional money. And that should actually flow into a bucket that I call the EBF, which stands for Emergency Buffer Fund. It's also known as a cushion account or a reserve account. And that's very, very important. I'm self-employed, you are employed. The basic parameters for someone like you who is employed is to have an emergency buffer fund of between 3 and 6 months expenses, not income. Expenses. And I'll stop and ask yourself, what are my expenses? And I've already covered those. Your lifestyle expenses, your operational expenses are part of your expenses. Your regular payments on your portfolio of debt, part of your expenses. So if you've got A plus B, those are your expenses, and your emergency buffer fund should be a certain number of months of those normal expenses. So as someone who is conventionally employed, as you are, you should have a buffer of between 3 and 6 months expenses. You work for Bernama, so you have like an iron rice bowl. You're in pretty good shape. So for you, 3 or 4 month pension is sufficient. For those who are in the private sector and they work in businesses or companies where they kind of feel like maybe my colleagues trying to stab me in the back and turn the knife, and you know that the level of job stability is not great, then maybe a 5 or 6 month.
Or if AI came to take their jobs, so on and so forth.
Actually, that's a different consideration, but it's very, very real, because it's possible that over the next 10 years, hundreds of millions of jobs are going to disappear. Now, do you remember I said for active income, we got to work harder, we got to work longer, and I also said we got to work smarter. So there is no point complaining about AI. It doesn't matter how old we are. I mean, we look plenty of gray hair here. It doesn't matter how much gray hair we carry. We have to learn to use the tools that are available to become better than we are right now. The world is not going to stand still. You know that Malay expression, katak di bawah tempurung? We really got to ask ourselves how many people in Malaysia operate on a katak di bawah tempurung model. Or paradigm, mental model.
I don't have much time left on the clock, Rajan, but it's been such an interesting chat. I want to finish off with what was the 5th thing on...
you build your emergency buffer. If you run your own business, then your emergency buffer needs to be between 6 and 12 months expenses. Many employees want to become self-employed. Before they leave their job, I would say build up to a 12-month emergency buffer. It will take years because getting a surplus is so difficult.
Right.
Now remember, the first element was active income.
That's right.
If you look at the entire diagram, or if you just Google the RAJEN Devadason Blueprint for Financial Freedom, so it's easy to pick up. But the 5th element is actually the generation of passive income. And for active income, you work for your money. For passive income, you don't work for your money, your assets are working for you. And there are basically 4 forms of normal passive income. You could have interest from the bank, or for those who are into Islamic banking, you get your profit level. You could also have dividends from EPF or dividends from your stock holdings. You could also get cash distributions. Many of us have unit trust portfolios, but most of the time the unit trusts reinvest the dividends. But for those who are moving into retirement, you can also use income funds to generate cash distributions. And then, we're Malaysia, truly Asia.
Yeah.
Asians in general, we love property, and so we love owning property and collecting rent. So we've got our active income, operational expenses, regular payments on your portfolio of debt, the build-up of the emergency buffer fund, and the generation of passive income. This is how you build your portfolio. And to know whether or not you have achieved financial freedom, the formula is very, very simple. You achieve financial freedom when your passive income, element number 5, is greater than your operational expenses plus your regular payments on your portfolio of debt.
Rajan, thank you for enlightening us and of course sharing your expertise on building our portfolio, and that just means a collective or a collection of the different types of debts that you have.
Portfolio of debt, yes, but when it comes to portfolio of savings and investment, then it's a collection of savings and investment vehicles.
All right, so thank you very much for that. Now, with the right strategies and mindset, it's never too late to take control, plan wisely and secure a more confident financial future. You've been watching The Nation. Do follow us for more in-depth conversations on issues that matter. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.